what you see in people is potential, the potential trapped, right? And immediately that image that you told us about so beautifully, Michelangelo, there's a sculpture trapped in this huge piece of marble, and he can see that. So I thought that's just a beautiful image that you brought together for us, and I could kind of even as you were talking about this, and also the image of the thought, right here and going right into the tip of the pencil and onto the page. These are all great techniques for everyone who's listening, to find those images that really stick with you.
Welcome to Narratives Leadership Story Talks, where great leaders go beyond the bottom line to create lasting impact. Join hosts Jerome and Julienne Ryan as they uncover the stories behind real-world challenges, offering practical insights to help you lead with empathy, authenticity, and purpose. Each episode dives into how leaders use storytelling to build trust, foster connection, and inspire action. Whether you're navigating workplace dynamics, driving change, or building high-performing teams.
Welcome back to a special debrief of Leadership Story Talks. We're here today to talk a little bit about our very first inaugural Leadership Story Talks Live, which happened as we record now just a week ago. And yeah, we wanted to talk a little bit about lessons learned and some of the things that happened during the recording. And I know you've got lots of thoughts, Julienne.
I can assure you this is a debrief like no other.
Yeah.
You've heard us say or share before. This is all about us and what was going on in our heads.
Yeah. So please take us away.
Well, we're trained professionals, or at least that's what we're led to believe on any given day. But live events are live events. And when we decide to honor our craft and share storytellers that we've had on as guests and get them to model the method and talk. And I'm going to share what happened. I was sitting alone. I was sitting at my desk, rehearsing, checking my lighting, checking my sound, and everything was good. And then our producer hit the live button, and the next thing I heard was Jerome's voice. Welcome to our live story event. Welcome to our live story event. Welcome to our story event. His voice was echoing. The perfect sound was now static. It wasn't good. I could feel my eyebrows going up. I could feel my eyes turning into I Love Lucy episode. And I heard Jerome's voice saying, I have to go fix something. Julienne, take over. Start reading our intro. So I start reading slowly. And I heard my inner Queen's girl going, you better not talk fast. You better make the most of these words. So I did. I focused on my energy. I looked at the camera and I started to speak. But no Jerome. He still hadn't come back. So I read a few more lines and then I'm thinking, where is he? What is he doing? I trust him, but he's gone. And we're working with a world that's no sound, no sight. I don't hear my audience. I don't see them. Nobody is breathing to say they exist. So I use a few more sentences and keep going. And I'm thinking anybody who's watching this must think I'm heavily medicated because I never talk this slow and I'm trying not to use my hands. And then I didn't want to be a hog. Like I was coming to the end of the intro part and the next thing was logistics and introducing the speakers. I needed Jerome to be by my side. So I went a little bit more and then finally I hear his voice, energized, apologizing. Thank you everyone for your patience. And then he was off and running. And I had to grab him back and say, wait, we haven't done all the important bits. And over to you, Jerome.
That's great. Thank you. Oh boy, I feel it's interesting. I having a kind of live debrief between us now. I'm feeling all the anxiety coursing through my body in this very moment. So thank you for
Yes.
making me relive that.
Yes, and I
um,
was rethinking my life when you were not with me. Like, why
yeah,
am I
yeah,
doing
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
turn into a meme.
yeah.
All those little things.
And isn't it interesting? Because I think that one of the things that happened, afterwards, or as we went along with the program, and things were working again, is that I recently rewatched the video,
Mm.
and the time that I wasn't there out of 47 minutes or something was 2 minutes. And it's interesting because you sort of time just really slows down when something
Yes.
isn't going right.
Oh.
Whereas, so that was your experience. My experience was frantic, right? Because I was just trying to figure out what was going on with my computer and why it wasn't working. So for me, time was going really, really fast, and nothing was slow, right? So you had to slow things down so that you could go on with the show and introduce the whole thing, which you did beautifully and with a lot of grace. And and in my experience rewatching it, I would never have known that there was all this chaos in the background.
Well,
That's what's
thank
so
you.
interesting to me.
Thank you, because I had to read your lines. I had my script up. I didn't use a teleprompter, so I knew my lines. I had highlighted, I bolded, I had practiced, I had crystals, I had water, I had everything I needed except you.
Mm,
And then I just was reading, had to sight read your lines as much as I was familiar with it. So I'm like, I'm probably breaking all the rules. I have to look done. Don't look erratic. Look at your script. I said, hold the frame. But I know it's been picture perfect. But I was like, just keep talking. And that whole thing about, something could go wrong. And I laugh. I think I forgot to say it. When you said the words, things were going perfectly. I was like, hundreds of years of my Slavic DNA had reacted in that intro. You never say things are good, something's gonna happen. It's gonna be bad. Like I've worked for years to try to get rid of that pessimism, and there it was seizing up. And then it was proof of purpose after that. I was like, oh my God, there all those people were right. But and you just have to have a sense of humor. And you're like, eventually he'll come back and we'll use this. But in that moment, you're right, it felt like a long, long time. And here's the crazy thing. When I shared with others about this experience, and I took a long time to look at the recordings, I was like, okay, how did this come across? Um, a friend of mine reminded me, didn't that happen to you before? I have a sense, and it happened to me in my first live keynote. I was doing a panel discussion that I was leading the evening before, and my panelists left me on the couch on the stage, and like that time as well, I had to think quickly and end up talking to the audience like a therapist to
mm,
say they left me. So I'm like, everything we go through comes in handy sometime. And your point is great about we're here in the vulnerability business. We're in the listening business. We're not in the perfect speech business. We're trying to help people listen and trust their voice. And then if we didn't do this, we'd be hypocrites. We need to show everyone thinks this is all picture perfect and we're rehearsing. No, it's not.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and
So
I think there's also something about. Um, I think you mentioned the word trust here. You
mm,
know, essentially, when something like that happens, you have two options, as far as I can see. So my first option would have been to say, Alexandra, our producer, please stop the live. We're going to start over, figure this out.
yeah.
Second option is what I did, to say, I fully trust you. I know you know what to say. We've done this before together, even though it was our first live one, but we've been on this podcast together for many, many years now, and
My
many
God, yes.
episodes. And we've been doing training programs together and things like that, workshops. So there's a lot that I trust in terms of your ability to show up, to think on your feet, to be present, to go on with the show, to be professional, et cetera, et cetera. I could go on. And all of that just came out in that moment of making that split second decision. It's not like I said, okay, guys, we've got two options here. Then you're putting your audience through that too. But it's really, so I think that's a really important lesson for people listening, because when you're doing something that's relatively high stakes, or higher stakes than something that maybe you're used to doing. So here it was just higher stakes because instead of recording, we're going live, right? So that's where the stakes were elevated. And if you think of the workplace and people with teams or who lead teams and all of the situations they're in where they have to depend on each other and something is not going to go according to plan. Your boss was the one who was supposed to do the opening remarks.
Mm-hmm.
He has a he's not feeling well or whatever, or he's got to tend to something, and he turns to you and says, "Hey, could you take over, please?" That's a tremendous sign of trust from the leader to someone else. And then for the person who's going up to show up there, what an opportunity, right? Uh, that's kind of how I see it. I remember, years and years ago, I when I was trained in with narrative and to run storytelling workshops and that sort of thing, and I really didn't know much about anything at that time. Not much about training, not much about facilitation, not a lot about storytelling. I was really learning it all. And and I remember there was a client that I wasn't supposed to work with, but then the client said, "We've got 10 more people coming to the program." And, that was like a week before. And then the two founders of Narrative told me, "Well, I guess you're going to take that group." And I was like, "What? How am I supposed to do that?" And so, but then, all I had to do was show up, and
Show up.
truly, and because to me, when I got that message, it was like, okay, these two guys trust me. And they're telling me I've got to show up. I'm going to show up and we'll see what happens. Right. And of course I prepared for it, but
Yeah.
it's sort of, it's that kind of thing where after a while, there's implicit trust that happens between us. And I think if as a leader, if you can identify who are those people in your team, when you're in a pinch, you can just point at them and you don't even have to think about it. And that's what happened to me. I didn't have to think about it. I was like, there's no doubt in my mind that
Oh,
Julienne
my
can do this.
goodness. So, and here's the thing. Yes, I had internal dialogue. Yes, I was thinking, and then I was thrilled, as you could tell when you came back. It's like, but there is that other expression of like, if you want to show somebody what they are as a leader, don't meet them when it's lovely and things are going right. Watch them when things are going south and something's going wrong. I know that we just went on. I wasn't like glaring at you through the lens. I wasn't, saying, what have you done? This is terrible. Don't, what happened? No, we were just like, this is life. And even right now, before we got on, I'm like, why is my lighting so weird? I look a little ghostly. But more important to me than it's not meant to be a magazine shoot. It's meant to share thoughts today. So the fact that we're doing this in real time and we didn't just brush it away, I think is kind of says something about the process and how much faith we are. And there was funny moments too. Um, as Nora Ephron used to say, everything's copy.
Right.
we're
Yeah.
bringing we're bringing it to life and lessons learned. So when we say we've had moments, we're speaking the truth. And we empathize with anybody who's seen that go-to live mic or those numbers counting off. There were no like we have a wonderful Alexander, editing our clips, but there was no tech in our head saying, okay, he's 100 yards away, he's back. It's not like that. We are
Yeah.
across the country from each other. We don't see as are our guests, but they were cool. So tell us about the guests now. They were wonderful.
Yeah. Well, and we talk a lot about creating a space for people to be
Mhm.
able to listen and to be able to tell stories. And that was really our intention with this event. We had three storytellers that we selected who had been guests on our podcast and people we knew, and prepared them to tell stories and had some sessions with them, gave them feedback on their stories, and then they were ready. And then they all showed up on time, and there we
Mhm. They
were.
were wonderful.
There we were about to begin, and then this happens, and we sort of come back to it. And what was interesting to me is that, you know, it was probably fairly seamless for the audience, but the guests knew exactly what was going on because they had been with us
Mhm.
rehearsing and planning. So they knew there were supposed to be two people introducing, right? And then suddenly there's one. And my thoughts were, oh gosh, I hope we're not giving the wrong impression to the guests.
Yeah, yeah,
We've done all this preparation. Now they're going to think we're not prepared, et cetera, et cetera.
absolutely.
And when we were asking them about how that was, um, it was the opposite, the feedback that we got. When Lisa in particular said, the fact that that happened, that something didn't go according to plan, actually reassured me that I don't have to be perfect, that I can show up as myself. And if there's something on my script that I don't hit, it's okay. And I think the kinds of spaces that we create together and at Narrative in general, and on this podcast, everything we do, really, I would say,
Mhm.
is that we create a space for people to be themselves, for people to mess up, for people to try something new, for people to experiment, and to say that it's all okay. Like your quote from Nora Ephron, it's all copy, right? For us, it's all okay, and it's all completely valid. And it was interesting that that episode actually helped our guests feel more comfortable, more relaxed, more themselves, feeling like, okay, well, I don't need to be so scripted. I can actually kind of do this. And as long as I'm here, I think that's the kind of space that we create for people. And it's very valuable. It's very valuable to see people, kind of have that moment of mess up, but then come back from it. That's the thing. And I think it would have really been a very different decision if I had said, let's stop everything and start
Mhm.
over in 5 minutes. I think it's a very different that
Mhm.
that message says to everyone, I'm looking for perfection, everyone.
Yeah.
And this is not perfection, so we can't go ahead, right?
So you leave
No,
the show
sh-
must go
show
on,
must go on. Exactly.
and next time, break a leg is what you can say.
Yeah, totally. I've
All the
learned my lesson.
best.
Well,
We
and
wanna make
also,
constructive mistakes during tech, because perfect is
exactly.
not good.
I was going to say,
We wanna have things go wrong in tech check.
exactly. And and
Ugh,
and and I was gonna say I know what went wrong now. So that's the other
okay,
beauty
good.
is you learn your lesson about things and
Yeah,
the
yeah, it's
format, the
all about
structure,
that.
all of it. All of it. But yeah, no,
Oh
the
my
guests were
god.
wonderful and I really encourage everyone to go back to the episode and listen to their
And
stories.
dissect it, yeah.
Yeah, because they're really powerful stories.
Mhm,
One of my favorite, I'll let people interpret this themselves, but one of the highlights for me was, when someone said after hearing the story that they could connect that story, which is a very personal story, to what that person does. And they could
mhm,
get a feel for who she might be as a coach, as a consultant, um, even through this very personal story without the storyteller having to connect the dots, right?
mhm.
Like I remember Charles saying that about Lisa's story, that he was able to
Yeah,
connect the dots. He didn't really know her at all. He'd only met her once. And he said, through that story, I've heard your title. I've heard what you do very briefly. I don't really know who you are, but that story
mhm,
tells me everything I need to know about how much I can trust that you are going to make life less difficult for me and that you're perfectly positioned to do that because that's her title, make life less difficult for people. And she's a coach in that way. So I
yeah.
really encourage people to go back to that episode and check it out because there's a lot of lessons in those stories. We also encourage everyone to who's listening to reach out to us if you want to tell a story on one of our events. As you can see, it's we're pretty open about it, pretty transparent about it, and yeah, we're also very willing to or spend quite a bit of time with our guests to prepare them and your story. So you're not. I know I'm kind of feel like it's a bookend because you started today the debrief by saying you were alone in that moment, right? And my message to people who would like to be guests on the
Yes,
show is that you're not alone, actually,
correct.
and we're with you every step of the way. So there
And
you go.
final note, Jerome is always very elegant and very calm, how he says things about the method and use the story, but use my mantra about I will use this for something. You are sitting in your offices or in your associations or in your community or churches or whatever you're working in, and you've had experiences and your staff has had experiences, why not talk to each other and say, let's find out how we can use these experiences for each other and for others. And I think that's where the work really comes to life. And it's not magic, but the experience is magical when you
Mm,
start to work, in this fashion. So thank you.
agreed. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for showing up and yeah, the show must go on. That's the lesson.
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening to another one of our episodes.
Hmm.
And once again, I encourage everybody to go check out the previous episode where you'll hear all the stories that we talked about today, and you'll hear the magnificent way that Julienne picked up the ball and ran with it. Now you've
And
heard
I
the
had a nice cup of tea and a piece of chocolate after. So I was like,
there.
I earned this.
Yeah, yeah,
Like I'm
absolutely.
done.
Take care of yourself for sure.
Oh
But
God.
as usual, I want to remind people to submit to go and submit a review wherever you find your podcast because that drives word of mouth. Remember to subscribe to the podcast. That's how you'll get all the episodes in your feed and you won't miss a single one. And as always, we are always ready to listen to you, whether you have a story you would like to tell and prepare for, whether you would like to do a training program, whether that's with your team or one-on-one. We're
Hmm.
always available for that. And you can go to narrative.com to find out more. NARATIV.com. Thanks, as always, for listening. And thank you, Julienne, for being my wonderful co host once again.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye,
Until next
everybody.
time.
For more information on the narrative listening and storytelling method and how it can help your business, go to narrative.com.